Sometimes we suffer. Today in Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch, we're going to talk about a woman who suffered for a very long time. I'm also going to share with you a recipe for a cheesy grit casserole, just for those cold mornings. I'll see you in a minute, my friends. Good morning. I'm here with my coffee. I'm also kind of crooked. Believe it or not, my fancy stand is a Quaker Oats box. The tripod that I use for the church is extremely large, so we are just propping ourselves up on things that we can find. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. Here in Indiana, it is cold, and I'm sniffled up. We've had quite an extreme change in weather, and but it is fall, and it is just, it feels good to be alive today. That's all I got to say about that. I want to direct your attention before we get started on our Bible study today to the link I have in the description box. It will take you to my blog, and there will be an accompanying a page that will give you all the goodies. There's some printable Bible study sheets, journaling spots, prayer requests, all that kind of stuff that you can print out. There's a scripture printable that will go along with today's Bible study, and there will also be a recipe printout for the cheesy grits casserole, and I will share that recipe for you at the end of the video. There is a playlist for the Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch. This is week 7. And we are getting to the end, my friends. The last two Bible ladies we're going to talk about, of course, are from the New Testament. Both are unnamed. So that's exciting. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to do next, probably next week. But I can't believe this year has just gone so fast. The Rona has just done a number on all of us in one way or the other. But what we need to do, what I've been trying to remind myself to do, is to count it all joy, to find those things in your life that are good, and focus on those things. And also focus on the God things. In November, on my blog, I'm going to be starting a one thing challenge, and it is to add one thing to your life, to your schedule, that is going to benefit you in some way. And so we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to share with you my one thing, and also we're going to discuss further the benefits of self-care. I know that's a hot button topic. I certainly believe that as mamas, we are unselfish, we are giving, we are diligent, but I also believe that maybe another term could be used for self-care, that we also need to take care of ourselves, because when the well's dry, sister, it just doesn't all go good. So anyway, so that is what's going to go on. If you want to check out the blog right now, I have videos that accompany if you look at the YouTube. But I have a fall home tour of the parsonage. It's not really a home tour. It's just a tour of a couple of spaces in the home and of the parsonage. And I also have a recipe for a pumpkin pie Play-Doh with some printable Play-Doh cards, and what am I thinking about? Treat bag toppers. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Okay, today's story is I really went back and forth, and it wasn't until recently that I really felt like God led me to talk about this story in particular. And this is a story with the woman with an issue of blood, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the social complications that this woman faced during this time. And the Bible never gives her name, but I think it's such an important story. I know it's an important story for me on a personal level. I'll share that with you in just a little bit. But if you'd like to turn with me in your Bible, we're going to actually read this story from Mark, Luke, and Matthew. And today I am reading out of the, I think this is the King James Version. I printed it out. I needed some big letters, but you can certainly read out of any version you'd like. My study Bible is actually the Life in the Spirit Study Bible, NIV version. I also enjoy many other versions, so don't feel like you have to read out of a certain one, but I am reading out of this. And if there's any questions you have, just please, contact me. I'd be happy to try and answer them. I'm not a biblical scholar. My degree field was in early childhood education, so but here we go. All right, so we're in Mark 5:24 through 34. And he went with him, and a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had had a flow of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and spent all that she had, and was no better, but grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and she touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I shall be made well." And immediately the hemorrhaging ceased, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her diseases. And Jesus, perceiving himself that power had gone forth from him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing that what had been done to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him, and told him the truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Now in Luke only has 5 scriptures that deal with this story, and it is found in Luke 8:43-48. I don't know that there is anything different, except it doesn't go in quite such detail. But I want you to look at verse 47 of chapter 8. It says, "And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace.'" So in Matthew 9:20, Matthew 9:20-22. This is only 2 verses, and it said, "And behold, a woman who had suffered from a hemorrhage for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. For she said to herself, 'If only I touch his garment, I will be made well.' And Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, 'Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well.' And instantly the woman was healed." So let's talk about this just a little bit. As I mentioned, the stories take place in the Gospels, and at the time Jesus was living in this little village of Capernaum, and I'm trying to find my notes because I've just messed them all up again. And he was on his way to a house of a temple leader of the synagogue, and there were crowds were around. There was a massive group of people, and he feels someone touch the hem of his garment. Now the significance of this, and the disciples brought it out, was that there was a large crowd of people. There were lots of people touching him, but he felt that faith, he felt that miracle go out of him. He didn't go seeking this woman, she came looking for him. And let's talk a little bit about the significance of her situation. Now, the Mosaic Law was, let's see, let's talk about this. Under the Mosaic Law, a woman with an issue of blood, referring to menstrual or postpartum bleeding, it wasn't like she had a gash or wound that was constantly bleeding. She was considered unclean and was put apart for 7 days. Now, a lot of this, I think when we think about unclean, we think of dirty, we think of, you know, those kinds of things. I really think that for the most part, those were considered safety guards for her. I can't imagine today being able to, you know, sit in my room when I'm on my period and just, you know, kind of lounge around away from everybody. But in those days, they were, you know, they were set apart. They were, you know, all the rags that they used, anything that they sat upon were burned or thrown away, or, you know, not thrown away, but washed and purified. During this time, if any man was sexually intimate with her, he was also unclean for 7 days and must adhere to the same sort of setting apart as a woman. And actually, their setting apart was actually even more severe than the women's were. And the Mosaic Law also specified that if a woman had an issue of blood that lasted longer than 7 days, that all the days of her issue were considered unclean and that she must be treated as such. This means that this woman probably had been clean for 12 years and that she had to live apart from others during this time. If she had been married, her husband probably would have had divorced her, as she would have been unable to care for her children or for others without making them all unclean. Her unclean status would have also meant that she was probably unable to attend temple or other worship services. So that's an extreme punishment. I can't imagine the life she lived to be set apart, to constantly, you know, feel like she was dirty, and that the relationships in her lives were completely changed because of this. Now, I myself have had, you know, an issue of blood, not for 12 years, but the longest I had any problems was 9 months. The deal is that I've had off and on my whole adult life, well, probably since my early 20s, I've had problems with significant female problems. And now I'm sorry if this is a little too personal, if any gentlemen are watching this, but when I was young, I was diagnosed, well, when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I had begun to gain a significant amount of weight. We're talking 60 pounds in a year. And started growing hair on places. My menstrual cycles started becoming irregular. You know, I wouldn't have a period for 3 months. And what happened was they would put me on a pill to see if my body could kind of jumpstart itself. And I would be on the pill for a little bit, then they would take me off to see if my body would continue that cycle. Now, this is early days, and I don't know if they would even do that nowadays. Of course, the pill can regulate your period, and there's been many times I have been on it. The other issue with it, though, is the hormonal issues. Sometimes it doesn't do good things to your body. For me, it also caused some more weight gain, which is also an issue. So the constant on and off and on and off and on and off of all those hormones, I think really messed me up, along with the original issue, which was the polycystic ovaries. Now, ironically, my periods started to becoming a little more regular when I went into congestive heart failure for the first time. And it was probably, let's see, when was that? Probably 2 or 3 years after that I actually got pregnant. Of course, I lost that baby, which is another, you know, it's another problem when you have the kind of issues that I have, you know, frequent miscarriage. And then I had, for the rest of the time, I had difficulties, you know, and then they would put me on the pill for a little while. And finally, I just took myself off of it. And Now, then for the last probably 6 or 7 years, I started getting very, very heavy periods, and they would be almost debilitating. The kind that leave you curled up in a ball, the heavy clotting. And the last 3 years, it was significant. I would bleed for, 6 months at a time. And as I said, the longest I bled was 9 months. And of course, we would discuss these things with the doctors. Because I moved a few times, I had to change gynecologists. And of course, there's always that issue that comes along with it. You get a relationship with them, you tell them what's going on, and they want to try this. Well, usually they start at A. They start at A. And I'll tell you what A is. A is to take a urine sample. It's a biopsy, so to say. And it is also to get a pelvic ultrasound to make sure there's not anything going on down there that you don't think should be going on down there. And then B is to put you on birth control pills to see if they can kind of settle you down for a little while. Now, I had been going through that for years, and uterine biopsies, uterus biopsies are not comfortable. They are not fun. They are very painful. And the fact remains is that I did not want to be on the pill anymore. I didn't want them to give me the high doses of Provera, which is a hormone that they would tend to jumpstart my period with. It leaves me a little nutty. And no matter how many times I would say, can we go to the next step? Can we do something different? They were a lot more cautious. And I understand. I don't want anybody to come waving a knife at me and say, okay, let's just take it all out. And so I understand that. But at the same time, I think that I got to a point where I wasn't being heard. And it took a big, ugly cry. In my new gynecologist's office, I'd only seen him 1 or 2 times before. The previous year, I had to go to the emergency room because I was bleeding so heavily. And I had to do the big ugly cry. He didn't understand. He thought I was just, I'm sure he sees a lot of hormonal and emotional women, but I felt like I needed to be heard. And I understand that if you belong to me, if you are related to me, or you belong to me, I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to open this sassy mouth and I'm going to say something. But for myself, I have a hard time sticking up for myself. I have a hard time being an advocate for myself. And so it did take a big ugly cry for them to finally take me seriously. I mean, I was 46 at the time, and I wound up having a uterine ablation, which basically they kind of burn the insides of your uterus off. I also had to have my tubes removed because my insurance required that. It's very dangerous for a woman who's had the ablation to become pregnant. Not that I thought that was going to happen, but there's always that possibility. So during that time, it was a very strange time. I was relieved that it finally was going to be taken care of, but yet I was terribly sad. I mean, we had adopted our beautiful baby boy, who is now 18. But that desire for a bigger family was always there. And I've talked before about my the problems of infertility, and it was difficult. And I will tell you that I have felt so much better in a lot of regards. I think my hormones are still wacky. But when I think to this woman with the issue of blood, and I think about the turmoil that she went through, I can't even imagine, because I know what my situation never, it never cost me relationships in my life. It never caused me to, be divorced from my husband, or, have people call me unclean. Those things never happened. It said that she, spent all her money on physicians and herbs, and believe me, I tried everything. And I don't want to say, I don't want to say that God caused it all, but I do believe that there were things in my life that He allowed. There was suffering in my life that He allowed, and He allowed for a purpose. I do believe that sometimes we need to be able to just be an advocate for ourselves. This woman came out among the crowds. She's probably hidden, and she thinks, only if I can touch the hem of his garment. I don't have to speak to him. I don't have to beg my cause, if only I can touch the hem of his garment. And she did that, and she was an advocate for herself, and she had that faith in him. And I'm not saying that all of our problems are instantly taken care of right away just because we have faith. Sometimes having faith, in fact, all the time, having faith in God and God's plan, even when we're in the midst of suffering, that is the biggest testimony of all. I believe in instantaneous healings. But what would this story be? Would this story be as encouraging if this woman with the issue of blood had only suffered but just a brief time? Her suffering for ages, and still at the end of it, she's able to have that muster, that confidence, that faith that she can go just touch the hem of his garment and it can come out. And, that miracle can come out of that. And I think for the story for us, not only to encourage ourselves with, what she went through and what she had to endure, she found her miracle even through the midst of the suffering. And I've talked about the infertility, how we were married for 10 years and struggled with this for 10 years before we finally got to adopt Josiah. And suffering has its place. Suffering allows us to recognize it teaches something about ourselves. It teaches us something about the Heavenly Father, the Lord God Almighty, that He is able to undergird us and to strengthen us, and we can grow in our faith through our suffering. And I want to encourage you today, if there's something that is going on with you that seems endless, that is never ending, I want you to put your faith in God, and that regardless, even if you don't see a hint of a miracle today, there is still going to be that miracle. I've told myself, if I'm not healed here, at least I'm going to be healed in heaven. And that is a hard thing to wrap your head around. But find joy in the suffering and understand that there's going to be a miracle for you. Right now I'm going to take you to the cheesy grits recipe. I think you will really enjoy it. This is one of the recipes you can feed your family for supper with a meatloaf or a pork chop. Any of those things are great. You can have it for breakfast. I love it with some ham and some biscuits. Yes, ma'am. But this is a wonderful, easy recipe. I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you in a minute, my friends. Here I'm going to share with you the recipe for a cheesy grits casserole. If you are a newbie to grits, I welcome you. This recipe will need 2 cups of water, 3 cups of chicken stock, 1 cup of milk, 2 teaspoons of salt, half teaspoon of pepper, garlic powder, cayenne pepper, 2 cups of quick cooking grits, 2 cups of shredded cheese, butter, and 3 eggs. Quick cooking grits are different, but those are probably the ones you're going to find mostly in a grocery store. Mine had been in a jar glass container. I got them at the Amish store and had failed to put in the little label to tell me where they were quick cooking or not. So I was taking a chance here. First I'm going to do is I'm going to spray my baking dish. I'm using a 9x13 pan here. Setting it off to the side, and I'm going to show you my grits there. That's my glass container I keep them in. Now I'm going to fill up a measuring, I've got a Pampered Chef mixing bowl, but I'm going to fill up my measuring cup here with all of the liquid that I will need, because I'm going to pour it into a pot. Oh, there's a teenager attack right there. I'm going to mix my water and my milk and my chicken broth You can use the chicken bouillon. I actually had a couple of these. I've kind of stacked up on them for soups and stuff for the winter. So I'm going to mix all of that in that and then put it in the pot to boil. This does make a nice sized casserole. We ate on it for a few days with breakfast and dinner. And nice thing about this meal is it's very versatile, this casserole. You can, in fact, this night, I actually made this in the late afternoon, and we had it for supper with some roasted chicken and a kale salad. So I'm going to add some salt to this. This will have cheese in it, but I personally think grits need a little extra help. And actually, the cheesy grits are my favorite way. I do like them with a little bit of sweetener and butter and milk, but my favorite is this savory dish. I'm going to add pepper, and then I'm going to add some garlic powder. Now, what you didn't see, what I edited out, was me going and searching in my spice rack for the spices I needed. I am really low on certain spices. I generally hit the Amish store a couple of times a year. Of course, with Corona, I didn't do it in the spring for any of my spring baking, so it's past time. I really had to search, and I was out of cayenne pepper. I'm out of chili powder, and I'm out of cayenne pepper. So I got some of this chili paste from the fridge. It's an Asian kind of thing, but chili's chili. So I did just a little bit in there. We like it just a little bit, just a little kick in it. And you can certainly leave that out if you're afraid your family won't like it. I'm going to measure out my grits now. Now this is what happens to me quite frequently. Here I am. I have a half cup so I can fit it in my jar instead of the whole cup. And I'm counting as I go. You know, I'm going to add up to 2 cups of grits. No problem, no problem. And here I am counting. Gonna put the grits away, and then I think, oh no, did I put enough in? Oh, stink. I'm gonna have to redo this thing again. I can't tell you how many times I do this. I do not have ADHD. What I do have is a lot on my brain. At least that's my story. So here I go again, counting more half cups of grits. You gotta do what you gotta do, right? Benefit, one thing I will talk to you about cooking, for those of you who haven't done a whole lot of it and it kind of scares you, one thing you need to do is not be afraid to make mistakes. And also, a helpful thing is to put everything away as you are using it. So that way it cuts down on possibilities of mistakes, and it also helps you clean better. Here I am. I'm going to use an old steak knife there to cut some butter up. This takes a 1/4 cup of butter, and I'm going to melt it in the microwave. We have another headshot of a teenager there. I'm going to melt it in the microwave for just a little bit, and then I'm going to keep on stirring. The important thing is to kind of just stir this up. My copper pot, which I love, does not really come to a complete full boil very well. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. So sometimes it's kind of at a boiling stage without boiling. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know what I mean. This is a super simple recipe. And here you go, the grits in all their glory. This did wind up being quick cooking grits, which only took about 5 minutes for them to cook up to the consistency I needed. If they would have been a long cooking grits, it would have still been okay. It just would have taken a little bit longer. Like a polenta, those kinds of things that you make, those might take a little bit longer, but these grits are just great. So here I am.
The key is to keep making sure you're stirring, because these kinds of things will scorch. This isn't something you can go off and run away for very long. I'm notorious for leaving things and starting something else. And so I'm going to do some fancy camera magic here and show you kind of the consistency they're coming up to. You can see having a good boil now, and I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit so I have less likely of them scorching the bottom of the pan. You can also see that the little chunks of things are actually the chili paste that I used. It's nothing weird or anything. I ran into a really good recipe actually that had some green chilies in it. Kind of made more of a Mexican-y, spicy dish, which is really good. Sometime soon, I think I will share the most shared recipe on my blog, which is a hominy casserole. I can't tell you how many times it's been pinned on Pinterest. I think people are always looking for something unique, and hominy is certainly unique. And I will share that soon. In fact, I think I might share that with the next Bible Ladies series that I do. See, I'm constantly stirring. Next week, I'm going to share with you a charcuterie board. They're sweeping the nation. Charcuterie is traditionally a French cheese board, but we have turned it into all something awesome. And that doesn't make a bit of sense, but you know what I'm talking about. And basically, for all of old timers, it's kind of a meat and cheese tray of varying degrees. You can add different things on it, but I'm going to use a special piece, which you will see next week, and I'm going to create a brunch charcuterie board that is just wonderful for entertaining or just for a lazy Saturday. And I'm going to show you a little bit how it's thickened up. You can see from my wonderful camera editing there that it is doing something special. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of show you how it's thickened here. You'll see there's still a little bit of give in there. It's that really great consistency, and I'm going to let it cool for about 10 minutes. And this is really important because I'm going to add egg to it. And I do not want the egg to scramble after I do this. Now, this is 10 minutes has elapsed. You can also see the sun is kind of doing funky things in the early evening, late afternoon. I'm going to get my eggs out. I think this does take 3 eggs, and I'm going to crack them into a bowl and actually whisk them up, scramble them up a little bit. You don't want big chunks of eggs in this. The eggs is more of a binder. I like it too because it adds some protein to this dish. Move my pan out of the way so you can see my fabulous egg cracking. I also usually try to keep out a bowl that when I am doing cutting or things like that, it's Rachel Ray's garbage bowl. That is really helpful in having some place to put your the tops of your onions or your eggshells, wilted greens, anything that you're doing. I do try and take care of it, though, fairly soon, just so I don't have as much to clean up. My kitchen is fairly small, and you can see I'm keeping a hot, soapy sink there. I do have a dishwasher, but this just really helps a lot. Mixing those eggs up. And I'm also, in a second, you're going to see I'm going to add just a tad bit of the melted butter to it. And what this does is it tempers the eggs. Now, I had the eggs sitting out a little bit, so they weren't really ice cold, but it tempers this egg. So it kind of becomes a little bit warm. So when it hits the hot grits there, which they're still hot after 10 minutes of cooling time, it won't allow them to curdle. You won't have bits of scrambled egg in your casserole. So I make sure I get all the goodie out of that. Now I'm going to add my butter and a whole bunch of cheese. This is not health food, though it does have some good elements to it. It's a very homey dish. And I think it also is perfect for the holidays if you're having groups of people in your home. It's perfect for a like a brunch buffet or a breakfast buffet. We have, as I mentioned, we have eaten it for a variety of things. And I think I mentioned this, but one of my favorite ways to eat is just with some ham and some biscuits and gravy, and also like just it by itself. I will say, though, that it's not a dish that I eat a whole lot of right now, simply because, of the grits capacity, the corn and stuff in it. I have to watch my blood sugar pretty good. But anyway, I'm putting all of this cheese in there. I do have a little bit on the side that I'm going to sprinkle on the top, left over from a bag. Mix it up. You can see how I'm mixing it all up. It needs to be all mixed together. So good. So good. I'm making some messes as I go along. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it into my casserole, my prepared casserole. I'm going to bake it at 350. Check the recipe description, the recipe page that I have on my blog for the exact time you bake this. It really doesn't take a long time. My problem is that as soon as I put this in the oven, I set a timer and somehow turned off my oven. Had to start it all again. Hope you enjoy.
I hope you enjoyed that recipe. If you are not familiar with grits or really not a fan of grits, I don't know if you know what you're missing. That's all I got to say about that. Next week, I'm going to share with you the fabulous Simple Brunch Charcuterie Board. If you are not familiar with what one of those is, a charcuterie board, you're going to find out. That's sweeping the nation. Also, we're going to talk about another woman who received just had an incredible encounter with Jesus Christ, and that is the woman at the well, who is also unnamed. And her story is just simply fabulous. It's probably one of the better known stories of the New Testament, but I thought she was definitely worth visiting. So I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you do beautiful things. Hug your people. Breathe in, breathe out. You're doing just fine. I'll see you next week, my friends. Bye-bye.